Bob, I don't think I've seen you since we graduated college together.
Yeah, nigh on 40 some years.
Good morning, Kathy.
Good morning.
Good morning, Laura. Tim. Good morning. Good morning, Ruth Ann.
Good morning, Dieter. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Still more coming in.
Yes.
Bob, where do you live?
I still live outside of Carlisle.
Okay.
It's just South Middleton. I have only about 3 miles to the college.
Is that the same house you were in when we were in college, or did you move?
No, I moved. At that time I was living in the Army War College, and now I'm living in South Middleton. In fact, I'm about to move again in the next month because I have a 2-level house right now, and as I get older, that's too much. My wife and I are moving into a 1-level.
Okay.
I don't know if you know. I mean, I tragically lost my daughter in 2011 at age 41. She was a Dickinson graduate. And I lost my first wife about 2.5 years ago due to pancreatic cancer.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So those were the 2 bad things. But then fortunately, right after that, I was at the store here, and this voice says to me, "Hello, Professor Rollfinke." And I turn around, and it's a woman who was the departmental secretary. She started off her career that way with us about in the mid-70s, I should say. And we started chatting, and then we started going out together, and now we're married.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wait, who is that? Was she there when I was there?
She was here from about 70. Hold on a minute. Wait, see. Oh, was it? Yeah, I think it was from the late 70s to the early 80s. Her name was Sonia Flagel.
Okay, I wouldn't know who she is because she would have been there when I was there.
I think so.
Yeah.
Hello, Gregory Elbin.
Grüß.
Hi, Greg.
Grüß dich.
Hi.
Is that Susan?
Oh my gosh, Mary Rose. Hi, where are you?
Morning, Chris Squire.
Hello.
Peter.
We're on mute.
Well, unmute it.
Well, I don't know
The little
how.
thingy thing.
I can hear you.
Greg, you're retired now, right?
Stimmt. Yeah.
And
Yes,
you,
it's 2014.
Oh.
Yeah.
did you move out
Susan,
west
Susan last year.
New Jersey?
We're out in Michigan now.
Yeah, out in Michigan. Okay.
Yep. Near the granddaughter.
Okay. Morning, Carlie.
Hi.
Hi. Well, you go.
Long time.
You came to when I came to Dickinson in '64.
That's right.
Yep. So
That's
you're
right.
at the beginning.
Carolyn's joining us too.
Oh, really?
Yes.
You got it though.
It's amazing.
He doesn't know where they are.
Yeah, he does. You can see us.
And Ruth Ann, you were there also in '64, right?
Yeah, I started in the fall of '64.
That's right.
Yeah. We are all originalists.
You know that was my,
Old originalists.
Well,
that was my first year here, and I thought, oh, this would be a long time, and then time just flew by.
yeah.
It's just amazing.
Well, I'm going to.
I was going to say, how many years were you at the college?
What was that?
How many years were you at Dickinson?
40.
Wow.
I came in '64 and I retired in '04. And the main reason I retired is I could have stayed longer. But first of all, when I got the job, there were lots of jobs at the college in languages. I mean, the college hired me at age 22 when I only had a bachelor's degree in economics and only my master's work done, not even a master's essay yet, and they hired me. And
Wow.
at that time, I had written to 10 colleges and I got 3 job offers.
Wow.
At age 22, imagine that. I mean, what helped me,
Wow.
of course, is that German was my native language, but still, it's ridiculous. These days, if I would apply like this, I would throw it in a trash can. And it's changed. I mean, they've changed completely. You know, in those days, it was hard to get jobs in German at the high school level, which is why my second wife was our secretary, because she was trained to be a German-French high school teacher, but there were no jobs. Now it's the opposite. Higher education is in terrible, terrible shape, as I think Ruth Ann knows. And I mean, it's just outrageous how people are being let go left and right, and how people are being treated. And now there are lots of, I hear from the AATG, they're, at least in Pennsylvania, they're begging for people to teach German at the high school level. So it's just the opposite of then. But anyway, then after 40 years, I decided, because there were few positions, when a college promised me that they would replace me, that then and they had a good early retirement offer, I said, okay, I'm stepping on. And there are 3 wonderful people in the German department now. My generation is all gone. We're all retired, although we're still in contact with each other. And the college has a tremendous people. Hi, Izzy. Hey, where are you calling from? In the Middle East or something like this? Where are you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I actually, hi, Professor Rollfinke. I was actually, I returned to the United States in March on global authorized departure due to COVID, and unfortunately was not able to return. I am still working remotely full-time in my position as Cultural Affairs Officer for the U.S. Embassy in Dhaka, Bangladesh. My tour, though, is ending. Its natural expiration date was is the end of December. So I am transitioning back to my position at the State Department in Washington.
I see. Wow. I thought you were going to be calling from Bangladesh. I thought that was amazing. Okay.
I would have, but I couldn't. I had hoped to, I did not expect that I would not be able to return. I thought that I would be able to go back and finish my tour, and it didn't happen, which is a great personal loss to me. I know many people have had larger disappointments and losses, but it was sad for me. But I'm still, thanks to technology, I've been doing Teams and Zoom calls with my staff, and I'm transitioning out.
Great. Yeah, that's how I've managed too. I'm involved in several Zoom groups. There's one of us, there are 5 of us, 3 Dickinson retired professors, Mike Klein, Harry Booth, and Davis Tracy. I don't know if Davis was the head of the counseling center at Dickinson for many years. And then there are 2 non-Dickinson people. And we Zoom every Friday. We used to meet at a cafe in Carlisle. Now we Zoom every Friday morning. We call each other the old farts. And we get time talking about everything. At the moment, especially, we all hate our current president. I mean, good old Trump, the and so on. So we get together about that.
Can you say hi to Professor Klein for me?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's doing well. And Harry Booth, you know, who's like 93 to 94
Oh,
now,
wow.
is still doing really well, which is terrific. Greg Houston used to be part of that group. I don't know if any of you remember, he was in economics. Now, Craig is not doing so well. I mean, he finally sort of dropped out. He can't participate anymore. But Mike is doing well. And we lost Enrique Martinez Vidal, who used to be part of that. We lost Larry Mensch, who was, you know, admissions director. And Larry also passed away shortly after my first wife passed away, about 4 months later. Larry had lung cancer, and we set up a Larry Mensch Scholarship Fund at Dickinson for needed students, and I contributed to that, which for me was very, very important. By the way, as I see everybody here, you know, we have a special birthday today. Not today, I mean, I'm sorry, on December the 11th. And that is, where is she? Judy, it's your 65th birthday on December the 11th. And I would ask you all to sing happy birthday, but since we're in different locations, I don't think this will work, unfortunately. Quiet. What do you think?
It's not gonna work.
What?
You can just say happy birthday.
Oh,
I just,
Birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday.
I found out from your husband, by the way.
yeah, he just took a call. But Becky just had her 65th, so he can't leave me out there alone. A couple of days ago.
You know what?
the 5th.
Oh, okay. I just know that Chris and Heather.
Hi, Professor Rollfinke.
Hi.
Great to see you.
You know, we have two couples here today who met in, I think you met in my German class. That's Chris and Heather Fire and Greg, Elvin, and Susan, right? And Susan is the younger sister of Ruth Ann. So we have a lot of connections here. Okay.
Yeah, we've been married 27 years this November now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's great to see you.
Peter, you and I sat together at Greg and Susie's wedding.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, we got 43 almost.
Mm.
Hey.
Yeah, Mary Rose was there.
I was there. I remember the velvet cake, the red velvet cake.
Yeah.
No, it was great after I retired for a while in 04. I would get calls from, in one case, Greg and Susan, that their daughter was at Dickinson. So then I sort of became friends with their daughter. And then there were other people. So I almost constantly, I had at least one contact still. And that finally that ended a couple of years ago. But now a classmate of my oldest grandson from Baltimore Friends School, my oldest grandson is Max. And he had a good friend, another Max, who's a very good violinist. My grandson is a very good trumpet player. And they were both in the Baltimore Symphony Youth Orchestra. And I convinced Max Jacobs, that Dickinson would be a good place for him. So he came to Dickinson and he's just finished his 4 years now. And he's now going on probably to a graduate school in music. He's a terrific violinist. So I said, listen, I wanted my Max to go to Dickinson, but he chose to go to Davidson instead. So he kind of disappointed me, although it was good because his grandmother was dying at the time. So it was better he wasn't in town for the last few months of her life. So I sort of adopted Max Jacobs as my new grandson.
Nice.
Yeah, well, Dr. Rollfinke, our son applied but didn't get into Dickinson.
He's talking now?
Our son applied, didn't get into Dickinson. He's at Juniata.
It's Juniata. That's a good place.
Yeah, he just finished his first semester there and good start. But we're a little mad at Dickinson, I have to admit.
Yeah. Well, I'm mad at Bob Emerson because he sent his daughter to, was it Gettysburg, right? Or was it F&M?
I was hoping that wouldn't become public knowledge.
Uh-oh.
It was Gettysburg, and
Gettysburg, right? I remember we met down there while she was there.
Right.
He was such a gung-ho Dickinson that I couldn't believe it. I was really mad at you that you didn't end up at Dickinson.
You know, it made my ears burn. It really did.
I tell you, my story, what happened to me with Gettysburg is back in '64, you know, as I mentioned to you, I wrote to 10 colleges and Dickinson first responded, invited me, and I had my interview and they called me the next morning. Paul Angelillo was the head of languages. Some of you may remember him.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, he offered me the job. Next day, my phone rings and it's the dean of Gettysburg College. And he asked me to come for an interview. I said to him, I'm sorry, I've just accepted a job at Dickinson. So he said to me, don't you think as a Lutheran you should be... So I said to him, listen, what does the fact that I'm Lutheran have to do with how well I teach German? I said, now I'm twice as happy that I took the job at Dickinson. That was my handling of the, now that was, of course, back in '64. But in those days, sometimes still was like that some colleges had to have their faith in order to be able to teach that, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, Messiah College is like that.
I know. Oh God, that I had a good friend at Messiah, and they have some very good people. There's no doubt about
Right.
They have some very, very good programs, but they have now this friend of mine, last time I had contact with about 20 years ago. And at the time when he was trying to be promoted from assistant professor to associate professor, what he had to do is he had to write I think it was a 20-page statement, how his religion governs his teaching, not how well he teaches his subject matter.
Oh, jeez.
Whether you get promoted to associate professor or not. Now, they may have changed that by then. I have no idea. But as they do have some very good people, and they're by far not the most extreme religious place. I mean, there are others that are much, much, much worse, and they do some very good things. So I have respect for Messiah.
Right.
In fact, I was mad at a Dickinson student once at Messiah. They had, after we started our Bremen program around in the summer of '84, and then started bringing people from Bremen to Dickinson. Every year now, students come from Bremen to Dickinson. And one year we had a student, and it was at the time when the South African apartheid was still on, and Messiah was bringing in one of the leaders to give a talk. Okay, and here usually we had wonderful people from Germany. But this young man said to me, I have a girlfriend in South Africa, and I can tell you what they're saying is all ridiculous, and there's no such real thing as apartheid and so on. So I said, this person was scheduled to give a talk at Messiah, and I went there, and as the talk started, this was an African, he said, please, I don't want anybody to record anything or so on, because otherwise I might be arrested, and who knows what will happen.
Wow.
5 minutes after the door opens, and this German guy from Dickinson walks in with a camera and so on, sets up and videotapes the entire thing without asking for permission or anything. And I'm surprised nobody reacted. So at the end of the thing, I went up to this guy, grabbed his camera, and I said, this is the only time in my life I did this. He took this, he was working at the media center at Dickinson. That's how he had the equipment. I took it away from him, and I said, the only way you will get that back is if you get permission from the speaker that you may do that, okay? I was really outraged at that. That was about one of the very few rotten apples we had gotten from Bremen. We have people from over there, but that was one exception.
You sure that was the only time you did something like that, Professor Rollfinke? I can't imagine.
There were other things when more humorous things when I pulled jokes on some of my classes, and sometimes the classes pulled jokes on me. Which is fine. I had no problems with that.
I remember with the film course when you and Professor Muller.
Oh, remember that?
Set up that whole Igman Bergman film and totally duped all of us.
Yes, we did. Wolfgang Miller and I did a film course together. Okay, and what we did it was a small group of maybe 6-7 students, and we knew exactly what they could all be doing. They were wonderful students and so on. So at the end of this semester, we decided to pull a joke on them. So we told them we would give them a final exam, they studied like crazy and so on. And what we did, the final exam was there was a famous Swedish director, Ingmar Bergman, who did all these movies in the 60s and 50s and 60s and so on. And there was a satirical takeover of his movies called The Dove, the Dove, okay?
The Dove, yeah.
Where the people speak supposedly Swedish, but it's really English, okay? And it's a crazy, all these.
I saw, funny.
And death is crapped on by a dog and so on. And it's a 45-minute thing. And we sat the students down and we said, okay, we're going to show you a movie that you haven't seen at all yet, and you're going to have to analyze that. So they sat there and we showed them this. They watched the whole thing and they didn't know what the heck to make of it. Puzzled. So we said, is it so difficult? Do we have to show it to you a second time? Yes, show it to us a second time. Then we just broke out laughing. And most of them people thought it was funny, but one or two were furious. How did you do that to us? You told us we're gonna have a final exam, and this is all that's going on.
Yeah, it's because we you guys didn't think we had read the textbook.
That's right. That's right.
Everybody thought we hadn't read the textbook. I think Kirk Kissinger was the only one who actually did.
He was particularly upset. Yes.
Yeah, because he read the textbook. I lived with him that year in the German house, and I was the procrastinator. I didn't read the textbook. I'm studying at dining services before class at the belt thing.
Right.
I'm trying to read the textbook and study, and he had already read it and taken notes and all this different stuff. And then we get to class, and it turns out, yep. He had over-prepared.
Right. Although some of you pulled good tricks on me also. I remember, I was known for always running my class a little bit late.
Oh.
And then one time, I don't remember, there was one class and suddenly 20 alarm clocks went off. Everything
Really?
said it precisely. And it was crazy, the alarm was going off.
Love that.
And then my daughter, who graduated from Dickinson in '93, she and I had a thing going every April Fool's Day. Okay, and one day, I think it was her junior year, maybe even her senior year, I'm not sure. It was April 1st again, and all day I was expecting something, and nothing happened. Okay, and it was like almost midnight, and finally I really forgot, and I was getting ready to go to bed when my phone rings, and it's my daughter Lee, and she says, "Dad, what's going on?" Well, a couple of friends of ours, we went downtown drinking, quite 21 at the time. So it must have been her junior year. And she said, and we were caught, and they took us out to the Cumberland County Jail to book us. Would you come out and get us?
Oh,
I
no.
fell for it. I jumped in the car. I drove out to the Cumberland County Jail, and I get there, and they said, "What do you want?" I said, "I'm looking for Leroy." I will. And then she and 5 other Dickinson students arrived about 5 minutes late with a big banner, "April Fools."
Oh.
That's a good one.
That's good. Mr. Rollfinke, you have some great stories. I want to go ahead and, I won't say kick this off because I've been talking for 20 minutes.
Laura wants to ask
everybody. I'm going to ask everybody to mute themselves, please. I'm just going to ask Professor Rollfinke a few questions, and then we'll open it up again for some questions from the audience. My name is Laura Wills. I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Relations. And if you haven't noticed, I am recording this webinar because there are some folks who are unable to join us at this time, but they'd like to watch it. So I wanted to let you know that. So thank you for joining us for today's Coffee Club. We started the Coffee Club this fall as a series of casual conversations with our retired faculty and administrators, and they've just been so much fun to sit and listen to. So I won't welcome Professor Rollfinke because you guys have already been chatting, but as he mentioned, he's worked at Dickinson for 40 years, from 1964 to 2004. He taught courses not only in the German language, but German culture and literature. So just a few generic questions to let you fill people in on what you've been doing. What have you been up to since retirement?
What I've been up to since retirement, well, first I traveled quite a bit, in the beginning, although I had been going abroad a lot because since we had the Bremen program, I was in Germany at least 6-7 times between 84 and 96. So I traveled more through the US and Canada, okay, with my wife. We did a lot of that. As some of you know, I'm also a very enthusiastic birder. So we went out to Arizona to do some birding, and we went to Florida to do some birding and so on. So that was one thing. Then, as I mentioned to you already, unfortunately, I lost my daughter and I lost my wife. But then I got remarried in July of 2019. And then we have a very active retired group at Dickinson called the RPDC. I hate the name Retired Professionals of Dickinson College, which is, faculty and administrators who are retired. But it's wonderful. I didn't even know that existed when I retired. I got this letter in my mail. You are now a member of the RPDC and so on. and I got involved with that, and I was on the board there for a couple of years, and I was president of the group. And we have a number of subgroups. For example, we have a music group that's run by Truman Bullard, and we get together usually once a month. We used to meet at Dickinson, you know, in the music case, actually at the home of the Bullards. And we would each bring, he would give us a topic, and then we'd bring a CD along. We'd play that for about an hour, and then we would have a quick break with some liqueur or a tea or something, and then we go another hour once a month. Now we're doing this again on Zoom, but it's, in fact, yesterday we had our latest Zoom session with Truman and Beth. Unfortunately, the quality of the sound is not so good. You know, Truman tried to, we did Beethoven because this is the big anniversary. So Truman is wonderful when he talks about stuff there. And then we have a group called Hot Topics, which is more, you know, whatever is going on in the country right now. And I've been very involved in that. In fact, it used to be run by Ella Forsyth. I don't know if some of you remember her. She was a librarian, and she's a terrific clarinetist. Now, Ella is still alive, but she's over 90 now, and she's really in a home with her husband. He is still in Carlisle. So she sort of gave that up a year or two ago, and I'm now with two other people, we're sort of in charge of running that. So we've planned a number of, you know, a lot of Dickinson faculty currently have been talking. We just had a member from the political science department. Now this group meets every other week. He just did a wonderful presentation about religion and the American presidency. His name is David O'Connell. He wrote a book on that subject, and that was a really good discussion. So we usually meet an hour every other week. And then there is a film group. I'm involved in that too. Nanci Malersky runs that. Some of you may know her from the French department. So she's involved in that. So that, you know, all of those things keep me active. And then I was involved with a group from the United Way called Money in Your Pocket. And what we've been doing is doing income taxes for low-income people, you know, who can come to us. And actually that came through about a former student of mine about 6 or 7 years ago. I got this phone call from a former student of mine who works for the United Way. And she says, oh, I'm having a meeting in Carlisle. Could we have lunch together? And I said, sure. And then it turns out, she said, could you recruit some people for me for this group? So I got Mike Klein and a couple of others, and we joined that. And I've been doing that now for the last 5 or 6 years. I do more what they call, I'm not involved directly with the taxes. I'm there, I'm just a greeter, but I do what they call either for people rent rebates that the Pennsylvania allows. And I, you know, sit down with these people and I fill out their forms for them and so on. And unfortunately now, because of the COVID, I've sort of had to drop out because I'm 78 now, and my wife is 71. And I said, if once COVID is over, I will be glad to rejoin again. And in fact, many of us, my client also dropped out because it's just a little bit too risky, you know, right now. So I've been doing that. Then I also, I've been going to a lot of stuff at Dickinson. I mean, concerts, and the music department is fantastic at Dickinson right now. I mean, it got to be very, very good once Truman Bullard came in, but I think it's even better now than it ever was. And they really have terrific talent, partly also because, you know, we have a lot more foreign students, and there's some incredibly gifted Asian students, I think, that we've had who've come along. I mentioned to you already earlier, Max Jacobs, who is, you know, graduating now with a terrific violinist. And I've been going to lectures and so on, and some athletic events. So it's wonderful to have that contact with you know, young people. That keeps me young. And Dickinson has a new program that it started about, I think, 3 years ago, called Friendship Families, where they ask people if they're willing to take sort of become friends with a student, usually it's foreign students or somebody who lives like 500 miles away, or the students request. So I joined that. So I had a friendship student right now who's actually from Vietnam. I thought they'd give me somebody from Europe, but he's from Vietnam, which is terrific, a wonderful young man. Unfortunately, because of the COVID, he He's now in Vietnam. I have all of his belongings from Dickinson in my house, which are stored here, waiting for him to return. And he's hoping to be back for the spring semester, but he doesn't know yet. He may not be back till his senior year, which would be next year. And then I have another student who's from New Hampshire, also in the friendship family. So that, as I said, what I do is I usually take these students, just like I did if any one of your sons or daughter has been here, I go to lunch for them once in a while, and we meet there, and then we have chats. And if they want to talk about anything, then they can call me. Bruce, also your daughter, I had also contact with when she was at Dickinson. Exactly. So, which is wonderful, as I said. And I'm always amazed that these young people seem to enjoy to get along with this 78-year-old. That always amazes me. But one thing is very humorous, I said, some of you still, I said, you call me Dieter, and you still say professor. These young people, they say right away, I said, call me, okay, Dieter, how are you? Okay, immediately, instantly. I mean, they have no problem with that at all. So that's some of the, pretty much what I've been up to, since retirement. Now, the college also called me back. I retired in 2004, and suddenly in the spring of 2006, I got a phone call from the dean. And the dean says to me, could you possibly come back for a semester because your colleague Wolfgang Miller had quadruple bypass surgery? Okay, so I said, well, if you need me, of course I can come back. But the funny thing was, my first wife had convinced me to throw out all my lecture notes and everything because you're retired now. So I had kept them for ages. I threw them all out, and suddenly I got a call, and I had to teach literature again and culture. So I worked harder that extra semester than ever before, but I did some new things, and it was kind of fun. And when it was over, the college said, would you like to teach one course now? I said, listen, thanks, but no thanks. I did this now. You needed me, and that's it. Although I did, Bill Durden, was then president for a long time, and Bill was a German major. In fact, I was his faculty advisor and so on. So we were good friends, and I knew Bill and Elke, his wife. So when they traveled together, I still once in a while filled in for Elke a week or so while they were gone. So I actually was sort of teaching a little bit until almost the year 2000 or something like that. So I technically really quit completely around 20 years. 2010, I should say. So I really quit totally about 10 years ago and said, that's it. Okay, now I'm out of there. But the college is terrific. I mean, it's just great.
I love how active you've remained. You are just a model retiree, just remaining active with your community and with the campus. That's just wonderful.
I think most of us are like that. And, I will say, I know some friends at other places, for example, Helen Siegel, who taught Russian at Dickinson and tragically died a short while ago. Her husband is at Drexel, and he said he's so envious. He's retired and said, you guys have this wonderful retired group. I wish we would have the same thing. And it keeps you going, having friends and so on. And also, when my first wife died, it was, Mike Klein, Bev Eddy, and so on just came. I was ready. I was really down, going through, knowing that she was dying and that there's nothing we could do about it. The last 9 months of her life were really hard on me and so on. But I had so much support that it was just amazing. And having that means so much.
Wow. Did you have a favorite class to teach?
I kind of enjoyed all of my classes because, I in the beginning, I wanted teaching beginning languages over and over again, would it get boring? But each class is different. And the character of the students, you get to know them and so on. So I enjoyed all of them. Language, literature, culture, although, okay, if I would say what ended up being the classes I enjoyed more were the team taught classes. I love team teaching, which was really, by team teaching, I meant teaching with one other person. The first time I did that was with Joe Hoffman from Fine Arts, when we taught a class together called The Grotesque in German Art and Literature. Were any of you in that class? Oh, okay. All right. Okay, I was hoping for that. Mary Rose, okay. Yes. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. And see, that I met when I came to Dickinson in '64. Joe was a senior, and he wanted to go to graduate school in art. He was an art major at Dickinson, so he wanted to learn some German. Hadn't had any German yet, so he signed up for beginning German class. And I noticed right away that he was very bright. And I said, Joe, listen, why are you doing this? Well, for graduate school, reading. So I said, look, don't come to class. You're signing up in a course. You and I will get you a book in German on Italian Renaissance art, which was his main interest. And you and I will work through that independent study, and I'll give you the course credit. And so we agreed on that, and it worked beautifully. I mean, his senior year, okay? So by the end of the year, he was really good at reading German and so on. Then he went off to graduate school and he came back. And interesting enough, he got the job at Dickinson, okay? So when he was back, he and I talked. Now, Joe was Jewish, but we got along real well. And we came up with this topic. Let's do a course on the grotesque in German art and literature. And before we started, I said, I'm going to prove that all you Germans are still a bunch of Nazis. And I said, just wait, Joe, just wait till how the course goes. And Joe was the kind of guy who was brilliant. If he loved something, he would do everything. If it was boring for him, you would notice. That was his one shortcoming. And he loved the course we did too, and I did too. And as I said, we interacted beautifully. And it actually, that course led to my dissertation then. At the time, I was working on a different dissertation topic at Johns Hopkins. I was working actually on the German dramatist Frank Wedekind and religious elements in his works. When in this course, as those of you were there, I don't know if you remember, one day we were looking at the Isenheimer altar, which is a famous altar in German, okay? And the main reason we were looking at is because in this altar, there is a Temptation of St. Anthony, which the Italian painter usually would depict by the saint being surrounded by voluptuous nude women and so on. Well, the German element, the Northern European, here is St. Anthony surrounded by these horrible, grotesque-looking creatures and so on. Okay, we kept, showing the difference between Northern European and Southern European art. Okay, and to get to this depiction of the Temptation of St. Anthony, we looked 1 second at the depiction of the birth of Christ. And one of the students in the class, one of the women, raised her hand and said, isn't this odd? Here is a ordinary bed with a chamber pot in front of it. Why the chamber pot? And I said, and she detected it, I didn't, okay? And I said to her, well, the only thing I can say I think the artist must have tried to depict, Christ becoming human, trying to use the lowest human symbol, which would be the chamber pot. And I'll try to check it out. I said, that would be my response. And I said, let's see if we see a counter thing. So then in the resurrection scene, sure, there was a different vessel, which was now the opposite of the chamber pot. And that led us to suddenly discover how often there are scatological, excremental elements in German art and literature, okay? And I went back to my PhD advisor at Hopkins, Bill McLean, who was chair of the German department down there. And I said, actually still talking about Wedekind, when I said to him, I'm teaching this fascinating course at Dickinson right now, and we're suddenly discovering that there's all this scatological stuff, in German art and literature. So he said to me, would you be willing to do that as a dissertation? And I said, would you be willing to accept that as a dissertation? And he said, sure, I would. And I said, well, I'm certainly willing to go with it as long as you don't have a problem with it, So I basically wrote my dissertation on shit and lit, okay? And it got published as a book by University of Massachusetts called The Call of Human Nature, okay? So it was rather interesting. But that was through a student who made us aware of that. And Joe was quite a character. He also, I would never have used the word shit in class before Joe, but Joe would walk into class and say, when you talk about the grotesque, what do you talk about? You talk about death, you talk about sex, and you talk about shit, okay? And he just broke through that, okay? And so And that's it. And then I team taught a lot of courses later on with Sharon Hirsch from the art department also. We did German Expressionism in art and literature. We did German Romanticism in art and literature. We did Symbolism in art and literature. And we loved working together. And I always liked this, you know, with another person, as long as I could respect that person, okay? And from those art classes, I learned so much from the art students, and hopefully they learned something from me about literature. And that was fascinating, you know. And what Sharon and I used to do, just, you know, in the beginning, the German majors would be sort of anxious about the art, and the art majors would be anxious about the German. So then Sharon and I would reverse roles just to show them, you know, I will try to analyze a painting, and she would discuss a piece of literature and say, look, we're willing to do it. You can do it also. And it really worked out well. The other thing I discovered at that time was, you know, there was always a question, is grading really objective or is it only subjective? And Sharon and I, what we would do, you know, for any exams, one of us would take them home first, read through them, give a grade, but keep it secret. And then the other one would take it, and then we'd get together later and compare. And we discovered that in at least 70% of the cases, we either had the identical grade, or one of us might have had a B, the other might have had a B plus, like we were just one grade apart. And then there would be like maybe 10% or less where we really disagreed. And what usually happened in those cases is that the student wrote a really good essay on one question, you know, and not such a good one on the other one. And depending on which field, and then we talk about it and we'd settle. But it convinced me that grading can be quite objective. So that was an interesting thing. But as I said, I love the team taught courses because I learned a lot from them, and they were so enjoyable. As long as I could do them with a person I could respect.
Wow, that's such a great story.
That's one of the great things about Dickinson, that you can do the team teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoyed that.
There's a comment from Greg and or Susan Elbin that they love that class. They still think about it and they mention it from time to time.
Well, some of you know, after I came up with this wonderful topic for this, some of you sent me stuff actually on when you went to Germany or so on. I know somebody sent me this wonderful fountain that's in Germany where all the creatures pee into the fountain and so on. Okay, so I got a great collection. You helped me with that.
That's great. One of my questions you already answered. You know, what was something you learned from your students? And that was a great story. Do you have anything else that you'd like to share?
Well, one other thing that you know, I learned a lot from the art students and so on, and so, you know, even in my culture classes, because some of you were involved in certain areas where you knew more about it than I did, and that's perfectly fine. So that was wonderful to learn from students also. You know, you were particularly interested in a certain topic, and as I said, that was great. And then another lesson I was taught when I came in '64, as Carlie and someone will remember, Herbert Royce was then the senior member in the German department. And Herbert insisted that we are really, really tough grades. So I apologize for graders, for those of you in the early first few years, because he really pushed. And in those years, in the early '60s or mid '60s, Dickinson, at the end of the semester, published a list of academic departments by academic average, you know, where you stood from what department had the highest and what had the lowest. And Herbert Royce was proud of the fact that the German department had the lowest academic average of all academic departments. That meant we had like 1 or 2 majors, okay? And finally, Frau Bogo, some of you remember, who taught Russian and German, she and I went to him and said, Herbert, look, it's all right to have standards, but, you know, to be proud of the fact that we have the lowest average, we do want to have some majors, you know. I mean, you should have standards. And it was really, I mean, fine. Now, he retired after about 3 years here and left. And otherwise, he was a wonderful guy, but he did, as I said, he was incredibly strict. So when in those early years, I think I didn't even have a 2.0 average in my class because he kept pushing it down, okay? So then, see, then some years later, in one of my 116 classes, which was like the 3rd or 4th semester, I had a student who didn't seem to be particularly motivated and so on. I mean, he came to class, but he was kind of a C minus student and so on. And I then, I handed in that grade for him. About 4 weeks later, after the grades ran, a letter arrives to me from this student. And he writes, "Dear Professor Rollfinke, I deliberately waited until after you turned your grades in to make sure I'm not trying to influence your grading. But I just want to tell you something." And he said, and he tells me what he's been through. And he lost like a mother and a brother, or I don't know, there were several people involved. It was just devastating. And he said, "Listen, you might have thought that I'm not interested in German at all, but it was actually your class that kept me going. And if it hadn't been for your class, I would have dropped out of college and I couldn't have done it. And I don't have the money. I can't stay at Dickinson and so on." And boy, did it shake me up. And did it say to me, I said to myself, you don't know what students are going through. And then, I learned later on also what OCD is, which is another thing. But some people couldn't come to class because they were frantically hand washing or so on. So I said to myself, from now on, I'm going to be much, much more careful before I criticize a student or really go after. Now, some students came up with the most ridiculous excuses for not coming to class, but there were others who had real problems and were hiding them from you and so on. And that was, I said, that was a real opener for me when and he was absolutely right. That's how I felt. I thought, boy, this student doesn't care. And then, as I said, getting that letter, so I tried, incorporating that into my attitude towards students and really take a different attitude from then on and try to give them every break possible because you're going through a lot of things in those years. And often we don't know, okay, what's going on. Okay,
Right.
yeah, I hadn't said hello to you yet, I don't think, or did I?
Yeah. I just want to open it up. I have other questions, but you've got such great stories.
Another thing I wanted to make, a couple of things that I think we accomplished here through German throughout the years, okay? First of all, when I came in '64, everything was single-sex dorms, it was all like that. And, now that's no longer the case. And actually, it was the German house. Bob, was it your year where, we had a German house and there was a French house also, and we couldn't fill the German house with all one sex because we were too small, okay? So the only way we could have a German house if we could have men and women living together. So we went to the college and we asked for that permission. And they weren't very happy about that because they didn't know whether the board would accept that or so on. But finally, they told us, well, yes, do it quietly, don't tell anybody. But so they gave us permission and we had, both men and women living in the German house. And that was really the initial breakthrough when they saw how well that operated, that actually when men and women living together, there's less hanky-panky than if they live in separate dorms. It really made a breakthrough. And the other thing I'm proud of is when I came to Dickinson, quite frankly, the attitude towards gays, lesbians, bisexual, and so on was terrible. It was really, particularly among students, it was really, I had a couple of students who confided in me and they had to keep things either completely secret or they were being sort of made fun of among fraternities and so on. And it was really rough. I had at least 2 or 3 who let me know that they were leaving Dickinson because they felt the attitude was so bad, But then when we started the Bremen program in '84, I think it was in '86 or '87, 4 of our women were in Bremen for their junior year. And I had no idea that they were lesbians or so on. They came back from Bremen, and then they came back, they proudly announced that they were lesbians and that they were, openly right away. And they held the meeting and they formed an organization called GLAD, Gays and Lesbians at Dickinson, okay, was the organization. And initially the fraternities were planning to make fun of them. And there was so much support came out from faculty and other students that it immediately, the opposition died out. And now Dickinson is very, very open. And I'm so glad about this, that the college moved in that direction. We're much more diverse. We have a lot more foreign students. You hear all sorts of languages. And as I said, in that area, that the atmosphere added to its gays and lesbians and and so on, bisexuals and everybody is really great at Dickinson now. And similarly, also for minority students, there are a lot more. We have a lot more minority faculty, so the college has really moved in the right direction, in my opinion. And a lot of this was really started, I think, under Bill Durden. Before to him, we would often, the faculty would often say, we need more minority students, we need more minority faculty. We can't do that, we can't do that. But once Bill came in and so on, it really started changing and has continued since then, which I think is terrific. And the college, we need to support this place. I mean, I've been a member of the Mermaid Society. I've contributed for practically since the day I arrived. And this is a wonderful institution. And and also the values that are taught here. I think now with Margie Ensign, who's another very, very good president, I think the college is in good hands, but it needs help because of all this, virus business and so on. And that's my concern.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions for Professor Rollfinke? You can go ahead and unmute. Rebecca?
Oh, I just thought we were all going to unmute.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, but it's wonderful to hear all the stories. I'm so happy to have the chance to be here with everybody.
Well, you and I have been in contact. Even though you never took a class with me, we
yes, I did with you and Peter. It was German Conversation 231.
Okay, another Pete. Okay, that's.
Oh yes, I dressed up like a banana and we were a fruit bowl.
Oh yeah, that's right. That was the days of Peter Steiner. He's doing well. I'm still very much in contact with him.
Me too.
A famous cartoonist. I don't know. He worked for the New Yorker for years.
Right.
And now he's living up in Connecticut with his second wife. And he's really great. I also brought him back years later when I taught a course on German humor, and he came back and gave a lecture about cartooning.
I was watching 60 Minutes a couple years ago, and the man who was the head cartoonist from the New Yorker was on. I just happened to be watching it. And before the interview was finished, he asked him who is his favorite cartoonist. And he said, well, I can't name one, but I can give you my top 5. And the first person was Peter. And I was screaming. My husband's like, what is wrong with you? But I was so excited. So excited. And I'm still in love with him, by the way.
He's terrific. Yeah. His most famous cartoon was the one where there's a computer there and there's a dog sitting in front of it, and the dog says, nobody knows that I'm a dog.
Yeah. On the internet, no one knows. Yeah.
Internet, right.
It's great. Yeah, there are cards and everything printed with that on it.
By the way, if you hate Trump as I do, then Peter has a wonderful blog. Go on Peter Stein blog.
I get it every week.
I want to see anti-Trump stuff right now. Oh my God.
It's hilarious.
Where the swastika is blowing over, flag is over the White House and so on. And he's got some real tough things going on.
Peter, I was the student who didn't have you. And so I finally say that you were the best professor I never had.
Well, Professor, my name's Jim Jones, and I don't have a history with you, but I did take your class in 1964.
You were in 64. What class did you take?
German 101 and German 102.
101, and yeah, you were in the two beginning. You were one of the poor guys who suffered because I had to give such strict grades at the time.
Well, I got my gentleman's C's and I was happy.
Glad to hear that. And Ruth Ann, you were a wonderful mermaid player.
Oh, thank you. It was really formative for me to be.
Wow.
When I came, that was the thing I enjoyed the most in those days, is the productions of the Mermaid Players, which had, the Holland Union had just opened that year, and Dave Brubaker was in charge, and it was terrific to see the plays for and I remember particularly, what was his name, who ended up being an actor?
Stu Pankin?
Pankin.
Yes. I remember Stu Pankin in the freshman plays, and he blew me away. I said, this young man has unbelievable talent and so on. And the mermaid players were absolutely fantastic. I'm glad that I helped, Dave always wanted to have a theater major, I mean, really. And he felt that he couldn't quite do it because he was pretty much on his own. But then one time he and I sat down together and I said to him, I said, wait a minute, the French department, the German department, the Spanish, we all offer drama courses. Why don't you incorporate those into that and you can have your major? So he put it together and he developed a major, okay? And so then he thanked me and I was made an honorary member of the Theater Honor Society. And actually my son then played in one, when Brian was about 3 or 4 years old, you did Brecht's, what was it? The Good Woman of Setsuan, I think it was.
Oh, right, yeah.
And they needed a little kid for that. So Dave said to me, can Brian, he said, how about Brian doing it? And I said, I'll ask him, okay? And I asked Brian and he said, no, he didn't want to do it, okay? But they said, give him some time. He said, wait and wait, okay? So a few weeks later, suddenly Brian says at dinner time, Mom and Dad, I do want to do it. Okay? So we took him in, to the rehearsals. This kid loved that. I mean, he didn't have any speaking part, but he was on the stage in several scenes. And one time he was supposed to rummage through some kind of trash can. So of course they put some candies in there. So he went over. This kid knew almost every line in this play by the time it went on stage. Okay? He knew exactly, and he just loved being. I mean, all the players were just incredibly kind to him and so on. I know what was his name, who later taught at Dickinson. Also, he did the sets and so on. Jim Drake. Jim Drake was in that production with Brian. Okay. And then I remember the Dickinson student, the female who had the leading part, Brian, the 4-year-old, developed a crush on her. And he had an unbelievable crush on her. And they had a cast party after the first night and so on. And here he is, and he doesn't want to go home. I mean, it's midnight, and and I said, we got to go home. No, I want to stay. So the mermaid players were absolutely wonderful. And actually, years later, my daughter also had a part with them, but she was older already. But Brian was like 3 or 4 years old when he did that.
One of the great things that I remember about a number of programs was how important the faculty were in creating a kind of family sometimes within an extracurricular activity, sometimes within a program where all of us parentless children, I guess is what we arrived as, really found a place. I felt very supported personally as well as academically by the faculty. And I'm really happy to see that only continues to grow as a reality. And I also would like to mention that it would be easy for you to change the name of your retired group to just the Old Devils. I think that's more appropriate.
That's actually right. No, but you're absolutely right about this family element at Dickinson, and Dave was one of the best at that. I remember when Dave had died, and I remember you were there, we had a service for him.
Yeah.
And when one of his real children says, listen, Dave had so many other children because all the mermaid players were basically his children.
That house was a complete refuge.
Exactly.
A lot of us used it as a kind of a safe place to go, and when everything was just too much, you go across the street to the Brewbakers, and they'd let you just sit around. It was great. But I know that you and the Bullards and the Brewbakers just made those kinds of homes, and I think that's a dimension of. I'll tell you that in my experience with higher education, that's extremely rare.
Thank you.
That happens.
I think that is one of the strengths of Dickinson. I agree.
Yeah.
Carlie, didn't you babysit for my son sometimes, right? Can't hear you. You're muted.
See. Okay. Yes, with Carolyn.
Yes, with Carolyn. Right.
Carolyn Fries. I thought she was going to be joining us, but something must have come up. So have to tell her that she can see the dialogue later, since it's being recorded. I'm sure she'll love that.
Peter, says that She has a name for your group. She says her dad goes to breakfast every week with his friends, and they call themselves the Romeos, retired old men eating out. Double sense. Anyone else have a question?
I just want to say thanks for this opportunity. It's great to see Professor Rollfinke. I'm sorry I can't say Dieter. I just can't do it. And it's great to see you, and thank you for the education and all the support along the way over all these many years. It's been wonderful to stay in touch, and especially to see you again today.
Well, I want to thank all of you. I mean, for some of you have kept in contact, and please don't hesitate to get in contact. You know, I still have my Dickinson email address. It's just Rollfinke without the E, just ROLLFINK at dickinson.edu. Okay. Now, I sometimes once or twice, who was it? I think I'm hearing, although I don't think she's on. No, I would get an email, but I think it was not from her. It was really because it would just say so-and-so is trying to reach you, and there was no message. So I was a little bit suspicious whether this was really legitimate or not. So I try to be careful. But otherwise, I'd be, you know, very happy to hear from you again. And some of you have kept up. And you know, I've been seeing you at reunions. Unfortunately, I hope we will be able to have reunions again. This is really all terrible right now, what we're going through. You know, I hope with a vaccine coming that very soon we can return to sort of a normal existence. And I'd like to have our Hot Topics meet on campus again in the side rooms of the hub instead of Zooming. On the other hand, Zooming is certainly a wonderful alternative. And as a result of this, we actually, in our Hot Topics, we now have people from Florida who are retired down there join us, and then one even from Philadelphia and so on. So in that sense, it opens things up a little bit.
I wanted to say, well, a couple of things. So I remember coming back for my 25th reunion, and I think it had been quite a while that I had been back, you know, maybe about 15 years. And I'm walking in the student union, and I'll say Dieter, Professor Rollfinke, walking through, he says, "Judy, is that you?" And I thought, you know, how many colleges, you know, my husband who's sitting in the background here went to University of Maryland, and I know something like that has never happened to him. And I thought, you know, this said volumes for Dickinson, you know, where after so many years, you know, you would be recognized and, you know, and acknowledged. And, you know, the German department was wonderful. You know, it was, you know, Bob, I'm not sure, you know, Bob Emerson, Kathy, Bruce, we were all part of, Becky, we were all part of that first German house. You know, we were in McKinney, and, you know, it was great, you know. I'm not sure how much German we spoke, but you know, it was really great. Oh, and I want to thank you. My husband just showed me the card. Thank you.
Oh, you got that. Oh, okay. Mail is not very reliable these days.
Huh?
Mail is not very reliable these days.
It's not. So,
a couple of days ago.
Yeah, he said it came a couple of days ago, and he made sure he grabbed the mail. So, and he had it actually under the computer. So it's like, oh, he said, look under the computer, and there was the note. So thank you very much.
There is that Dickinson thing, you know. I had in the 90s, actually close to 2000, I had a student who I was close to, and one day in the wintertime, my phone rings in the evening, and he says, "Professor Rollfinke, some friends and I, we're out hiking down here in the woods and so on. I mean, at a park nearby, and we left our car and we kind of got tired. Could you come out and get us and take us back to the car?" Sure. So I hopped in the car and I drove down there about a half an hour, and I got them and I picked them up. So he said to us, "And see, that's Dickinson. That's a Dickinson professor. This would never happen at your school."
Probably true.
But you know, you guys also, you've kept all of us young, and then it's wonderful that they have the interaction. And what's nice too, I mean, the three people in German right now. By the way, one who has a very funny name. Her real name is Pfannkuchen is her last name. You know, but she's wonderful, and they all three have tenure now again. So German is in good hands there, and they're continuing the tradition. And they're also some retired professors are a little bit disappointed that once they retire, they don't hear much from their department. But in the German case, they keep us involved, and they let all, Bevetti, Wolfgang Miller, Gisela Rütke, and I, we're still, anytime they have a guest speaker or so on, they let us know, or if they have some special event, they invite us and so on. So that's nice too, that it keeps going like that. So from the other end, like Amanda, you're more from the 90s, right? I think more people I hear from now are mainly people from the 70s or so on.
Yeah, I graduated in 2003.
Okay, so you're at the other end. That's right. What are you up to now?
Well, now I feel older because I think about 2020, and or when I went back to my reunion, it still felt like Dickinson, but it felt different. And then you realize, oh, I'm not 22 anymore. 38. I have two kids. I have a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old here sitting next to me. My 3-year-old's at preschool right now. I'm not working right now because I'm with them, but I was teaching. I was an ESL teacher.
Oh.
So that's how I took my language background and put it to use. Although I have to say I never had a student who spoke German, so that was just mostly Spanish with other languages mixed in, depending on, I had kids coming in from Bangladesh, Pakistan, China, all different countries that spoke Spanish. It was an adventure. I was in New York City with that.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's another example of how Dickinson graduates do wonderful things like teaching ESL. Or Candy, you've worked for years with autistic children, right? In school, which is, that's one thing that impresses me so much. My first wife was a Bucknell graduate, good school, but Bucknell grinds out business executives just to make profits and so on and so forth. I think Dickinson has much better ethics and so on, where our students care about other things also, and that impresses me so much because we ought to make a difference in this world and so on. And nothing wrong with making some money, of course, but just not chasing after that completely. That means so much to me. So that's wonderful to hear that those are the kind of things. Bruce, what are you doing? Bruce Silverberg. You're muted.
Yes, and I've been sitting here just quietly listening. I wrote you a note, Dieter, just privately, but I wasn't a German major. I was an economics major, so I knew Craig Houston.
Right.
But I took your class. I took the introductory German language classes, I think probably in 1974.
Okay.
But I then, after graduating from Dickinson, I had done almost a minor in fine arts, and finally I followed my heart and not my wallet and went into architecture. And sort of worked for a number of years. So studied and worked in Massachusetts and in New York City, but I had started teaching also, and I finally, about 20-something years ago, shifted my focus to teaching, because I loved teaching as well. I just recently retired from teaching in a college transfer-oriented architecture program at a community college in San Luis Obispo, California. And I got out before COVID, but kind of glad I did now. But I loved, I think, everything that you just said about the engagement in things that allowed one to earn a living, but also had some, whether you want to call it a higher purpose or a larger societal purpose. I was very involved in actually in some interesting ways tying my economics background, and I would never in a million years call myself an economist, but I actually tied that into my my work in architecture and urban design. Had started looking at policy frameworks for trying to understand and make decisions towards sustainable society. And just the very fact that I called it always sustainable society and not sustainable architecture, this goes so much to the heart of holistically of the kind of education I had at Dickinson. So I'm incredibly grateful for that experience.
Yeah, another excellent example, right? Kim, whatever.
Incidentally, my background here, that's not my house.
Okay.
That's a Byzantine cistern in Istanbul, and I actually did have the privilege of teaching about 28 years ago as a visiting instructor at a university architecture program in Turkey.
In Turkey, wow.
And I used my German there.
Oh, excellent. Kim?
Well, actually, I'm in my office right now. I work for a Franciscan University in Reading, Alvernia. I've been doing fundraising for about over 20 years. So that's what I'm in the institutional advancement office here. Unfortunately, don't use my German very much, but still keep in touch with Dickinson. And I think Laura knows I've been involved with the reunions and fundraising for Dickinson whenever we have our reunions, which is great. I have, and I was from Reading, returned here just by dumb luck.
Right.
I have my 3 children are all grown and 2 are married and all 3 of my kids live in Colorado. I have 3 grandsons. I do a lot of traveling. Unfortunately, haven't traveled. I turned 60 over the summer and was supposed to go to Italy, but didn't get to go. But yeah, just keep really busy, really active, do a lot of outdoor activities.
Right. Right. Another example how students help us sometimes is in the case of Candy. When I was a PhD, candidate, I'm finishing my dissertation at Johns Hopkins, and I told you what I was writing on. My faculty advisor said, we really need a psychiatrist on your defense. And where are we going to find a psychiatrist? Well, I hope, Candy, I hope you don't mind if I tell the story.
It's fine.
I was Candy's faculty advisor. She was in her first year. And one day I get a call that Candy has been taken to the Carlie Hospital. And so I decided to rush over there and try to find out what's going on. So I get there and her parents are there, okay? And we were waiting she had some tests and so on to find out what's going on when her father starts talking to me. And he says to me, oh, he says, I hear that you were at Johns Hopkins. And I said, yes. And he says, you're getting your PhD. He says, I'm at Hopkins also. And then he says, what are you writing your dissertation on? And I decided, oh my God, do I dare tell him? The Candy is dying right now, or what's going on? Do I dare? But he had these wonderful sparkling eyes and so on, and looked, really friendly. So I said to him, I sort of gently, I said, well, I'm writing on scatology in German literature. So he says to me, do you know what Gilles de la Tourette syndrome is? And I said, no. And he said, I'm the country's leading expert on that. And that is people who utter obscenities and so on, and sometimes also excremental terms and so on. And it turns out that he was a psychiatrist originally from Vienna who came over here, who was at Hopkins. So I said to him, would you be on my defense for my dissertation? He said, sure. Okay. And that's how I found, if it hadn't been for Candy who actually turned out to be fine, but if it hadn't been for that's how I found. I go back to Bill McLean. I said, hey, I just found my psychiatrist. And he said, wonderful. And then on my defense, here I had, 2 people from the German department, this sort of stodgy English professor, and then Candy's father, Edward Asher. And the English guy says to, I should also, then I quickly did some more research about Gilles de la Tourette and also put that into my dissertation. So the guy from English says, this stuff that Dieter Rollfinke says about Gilles de la Tourette doesn't make much sense to me. And Dr. Asher said, wait a minute, he's absolutely right. I mean, I'm an expert on this field. And the two of them were arguing for 20 minutes while I was sitting there like this. And then they said, okay, that's it, you're done. Okay, and I hardly had to answer any questions because it was all settled between those two. And I said, okay, you finished, you're great, everything is fine. So I had to thank Candy for, through the Dickinson connection, I wouldn't have known where I was going to find a psychiatrist, especially one who could read German, okay? So it turned out that way. And so I've been friends with her and her family ever since. Now, unfortunately, her parents are both gone now, but they were wonderful people.
Professor, I have a couple of messages for you through the chat. Bruce Geller says, Dieter, you are so very amazing. So great seeing other Dickinsonians this morning. Stay safe and well.
Thank you, Bruce.
Laura Legg says, good to see you all. Hope to see you in 2021 for lunch dinner.
Okay.
And lots of people just saying it's good to see everybody. Any last minute questions before we close for today?
I just wanted to say, I know you've had some personal losses, Professor Rollfinke. I can't do the Dieter either. I'm sorry. But anyhow, I started off at Dickinson with some pretty emotional losses. I lost my father my senior year and my brother between freshman and sophomore year. And like you mentioned, the student earlier, if it hadn't been for you, I really don't know what I would have done. And a lot of those personal greetings, a lot of those kind of personal phone calls and just checking up on me, encouraging me to keep going. I mean, Dickinson truly saved me. I don't know what I would have done without it, but particularly you, Professor Rollfinke, you really and truly, sorry, I'm going to start to cry. I've always wanted to try to express it to you without crying or in a way, but I truly feel I don't know what I would have done. So thank you.
Thank you, Heather. You've all been great. It's really been great seeing you all again. Stay healthy. If I live another 15 years, then maybe Amanda, if your children come to Dickinson, I can still meet them.
My husband is a University of Michigan grad, so he's going go blue in their heads all the time. But I'd say Dickinson's a good choice as well.
Our daughter did well there. Thanks, Dieter, for mentoring.
Thank you.
For all the lunches that you did.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye. Stay well.